Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is once again that time of the week. Where we update you on what's really going on in this crazy, crazy world of ours. It is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. The only time on Wider where we uncover the truth, we dig underneath the headlines, we call out the establishment on its BS, talk about what no one else is talking about, and generally talk about the news from a more revolutionary point of view. So we're going to dig into our topics real quick. I got to go let my co-host in. I will be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here. I'm joined by my co-host. Oh, you know my co-host here. We're talking. See, if we were Canadian, it would basically be the same show. But it's like, oh, we're gonna call out Justin Trudeau, and you know he's really building all those pipelines. I'm so sorry about that.
He's just busy trying to make money off of those tar sands, you know.
No, don't you know? Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right, so a lot to talk about today. We're gonna
not my hoose,
not my hoose.
You just all of these American refugees. They just need to get on a boat and go home.
Just go home, don't you know? All right. Okay, let's not spend the whole show talking in poor Canadian accents. But
now I feel like my expression has been suppressed.
I'm sorry.
So much for the tolerant left.
It's PC culture, man.
Anyway.
Get out of your safe space. It's okay. Most Canadians have a pretty good sense of humor about that. So, anyway. A lot to cover on the show today. In about half an hour, we're going to be joined by our dear friend Joe from the International Youth and Students for Social Equality. We're going to touch on some local issues. There's a great autistic installation at the Fountain of the Pioneers last week. We'll be talking about that. Yes. They made some aesthetic changes to it.
The art snob voice.
Yes. I just gotta. Man, if you were at that city commission meeting last week, it was a parade of nice white liberal arts degree holding white people. So, anyway, we'll also talk. There was a disruption at the Macy's Day Parade that a lot of Kalamazoo peeps were involved in. And I think we'll start out by talking about, and there is a recent development passed in the House. and could be going to the Senate as early as Thursday.
Oh, it's definitely going to the Senate.
It's going to the Senate.
It's going to be there.
Yep.
I'll save everything I have for that for when we get to it. I have a lot.
Well, aren't we gonna? Were we gonna start with a tax bill? Or no, Black Friday.
Black Friday.
Yeah. Okay.
So we had this holiday last week. I mean, it was a holiday. I got work off. That was nice.
Yeah. So Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and last week was the Thanksgiving, which we talked about extensively last week with our guest Eugene Strong, and talked about kind of the colonialist implications of that. But the day after Thanksgiving is the holy capitalism's holy day, as I like to describe it. Black Friday.
The birth. It's the celebration of the birth of supply side Jesus.
Supply side Jesus. We have a pretty cynical outlook when it comes to Black Friday, and there's this article in Common Dreams that really brought up some of the points, and we're going to be kind of discussing them more intensely on the show, and also some very important pieces of data and statistics. But the article we're going to be kind of discussing around is called "Every Friday is Black Friday. Why our addiction to consumption and growth is killing us." And this kind of goes back to when we talk about climate change. And let's kind of start from this quote. "Green consumerism, material decoupling, sustainable growth, all are illusions designed to justify an economic model that is driving us to catastrophe." And you know what that really means is, you see a lot of big corporations that are doing like these kind of piecemeal things, like, oh, we're gonna make sure that our trucks have a certain gas mileage, or we're going to encourage our customers to use recyclable bags, or put a little logo that says, like, we used X amount of recyclable materials. And what that really does is it obfuscates from the fact that we are consuming so much of the planet's resources at an increasingly rapid and unsustainable pace.
Yes, especially when you take into account, like, the things we buy today. 20 years ago, nobody would have thought. Like, honestly, when Dasani came out, I remember when they released... I remember when they released Dasani and when, like, Evian and all that junk. I remember when it, like, started to be a thing, and people were all like, bottled water? Why do you need to sell bottled water? We get it from our municipal tap. It's fine. It's clean. It's drinkable. Man.
And like that.
And now it's not.
No.
And, like, the government has failed our water infrastructure, and places in America don't have drinking water.
Do you want to know, like, a great example of, like, this is what capitalism does? So, in about a mile and a half outside of Flint, which is probably the most famous American city for its lead contamination, which actually, according to a lot of recent studies, there's dozens and dozens of cities across America that have as bad lead pipe lining in their pipes, if not worse. But anyway, let me not stray too far from this. About an hour and a half away from Flint, Nestle is pumping out the groundwater in order to bottle and sell, and this has been
and distribute globally. So it's not even just like the fact that they bottle water, that we sell bottled water in plastic made out of like ethyl propane or methyl propane. Like, plastic is refined oil, which continues our usage of fossil fuels. That stuff doesn't decompose for millions of years, so that's an impact on the freaking environment. So not only are we producing plastic to hold water in, we're pumping water out of ecosystems and redistributing it globally, destroying local ecosystems. Because when you take water out of an ecosystem and put it somewhere else that's not adapted to handle that much water, you start to get ecosystems start to dry out. Like global aridness is going up.
Oh yeah,
just straight up, aridness is going up, and in places that don't handle that kind of volume of water, when that like people live there, they buy bottled water, and their waste has to go somewhere. Like, it screws their environments too. Like, we're literally impacting global ecosystems because of capitalism.
Oh yeah, and you know, like let's make no mistake. I feel like, you know, a lot of people listening on the show might be like, "Oh, you're making me feel bad." It's like, well, we're not
We're not trying to make you feel bad.
Yeah.
This is just what's happening.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like when we talk about this problem with our kind of disposability and how our culture is set up. This is across the board, you know. So, you know, excuse me. The richest countries in the world, which a lot of people would assume, like, if you go by like kind of the mantle of green consumerism, it's like, oh, if you're aware, you're gonna recycle, et cetera, et cetera. Well, according to this article that was in the Journal of Environment and Behavior, those who identify themselves as conscious consumers use more energy and carbon than those who don't. And that's essentially because if you are in like a wealthy country, there's this kind of subconscious disposability that gets trained into you. You know, like, here's a plastic bag, here's a styrofoam container, here's you know, everything is put into a box for you that you buy and you sell, and you're supposed to upgrade your phones every couple of years.
Planned obsolescence in your technology.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, just planning, selling the package along with the product creates so much more waste than just selling the product. Like, it's one of those things where you go out and you buy a box of wheat thins. Well, there's the box of the wheat thins, and then inside the box is the bag that actually contains the wheat thins. Mm-hmm. Why isn't it just in the bag? Why isn't it just in the box?
Oh yeah, or there's and this is like some Vice video or something I saw a while ago, but somebody had this idea to start a grocery store where you bring your own containers and everything's like stored, and then you turn a valve and like, you know, it spits out cereal or sugar or whatever it is that you need. So there is a way to do this, you know, realistically in our current model, but that is not the way that our system is set up. And, you know, a lot of it is tied into the fact that our economic growth is tied into consumption. So here's the schism. For our economy and our economists, and even like progressive economists, you know, growing like the economy by, say, like, you know, global GDP by like 3%. That's a good thing. You know, more consumption, it propels the economy, but in the long term, that has a devastating effect on our ability to you know, control our environment and essentially survive as a species.
Consuming resources faster than resources can actually replenish is actually, you know,
basically
bad.
Our current economic system treats the planet as an infinite resource when it is finite. It is. And all the green consumption in the world is not going to change the fact that we need to live sustainably. And that means coming up with solutions to the way we live that do not require endless manufacturing. But again, that's what our system is built around. And, you know, right, like, you know, in a microcosm, like, look at some of the fights going on. Like a couple weeks ago, we talked about a fight inside the Michigan Democratic Party between labor leaders and environmentalists, because the labor leaders wanted the Nexus pipeline built so that it would create jobs. Well, I mean, that's part of the problem. You know, those wasteful boxes, that wasteful plastic in your cereal box, somebody makes those, and so there is an interest in order to grow ourselves economically in order to maintain that. You know, granted, that job may have been shipped overseas, but somebody's getting richer off of that. It's usually the people in the top income brackets, but you know, that's a problem too. You know, you'll hear a lot of time that like, oh, overall growth in the economy is good for everyone. But that's not true at all. Basically, any additional income generated by a rising like gross domestic product
it goes to the people who own all of it.
Yeah.
Like it's something that Bernie Sanders, our beloved New Deal grandpa, loves to fling out all the time, is that especially in America, like specifically in America, 52% of all new income goes to the top 1% of earners.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And like this here's a number that really like got me. So if we just stuck with our current, you know, capitalist economic system, it would take 200 years for everyone to make the equivalent of, and that's like the whole population of the planet, to make an average of $5 a day.
Yeah. I believe the numbers there is like average income generated at that point would be like $1 million.
Yeah.
Toward the middle top end. Like that's capitalism. It's one of these things where like I continuously, like, I work in a capitalist system, I live in a capitalist system, I can't escape it. It's pervasive. It's part of my everyday. I can't stand it because I know that I'm not actually getting the full worth of what I'm doing for the company I work for their profits. They're better. The company I work for is, I would say, better in some cases than some other companies, but at the same time, like I'm sitting here as essentially the groundwork, the foundation of their entire business model. And I know I'm getting the shortest end of the stick. Like, completely.
Oh, yeah.
Capitalism is a pyramid scheme, guys.
Yeah, y'all. And it's a pyramid that's going to basically fall on top of all of us if we don't. And, you know, here's the thing. You know, it like you look at it and it seems so overwhelming. You know, there's so Josh Fox's documentary that came out last year, How to Let Go of the World and All the Things That Climate Can't Change. There's a sequence in it where he just talks about like how it's everything. It's our meat consumption. It's our habits. You know, it's hardwired into us. And you know what I will say to that, like if you get overwhelmed and you feel a little like despondent and hopeless about the whole situation, you know, we've seen I mean, a rapid transition in thinking that, you know, like look at between now and just like 2 or 3 years ago, the awareness of this issue, of how dire it is, especially among young people. I mean, you factor in like most old people and they're like, what? No, everything's fine. But most young people, most people our age, most people the average age of the folks listening to this program understand like we need to drastically change our way of life. And I've seen most people are willing to do it. You know, what it's really going to depend on, and, you know, I personally think like there's a lot of like memes and stuff online, late stage capitalism, but I take that pretty seriously. I think like capitalism is not sustainable. Yeah. I think it's going to die, and it's what we do with that.
It's gonna cave in on itself at some point or another. Like capitalism by itself is an Ouroboros. It is the snake eating its own tail. Mm-hmm. Like eventually, it's gonna consume itself one way or the other. If it doesn't collapse inwards on itself, it's going to have the things it exploits rise up and destroy it. Just like the communist dictatorial regimes in Russia, like that's just it. I don't know. I don't have the I have no idea what to do. Honestly, when we talk about disrupting an economic system that is going to inherently destroy us, because it's just going that way. It's one of the late stage capitalism memes love to focus on things like, hey, why does an insulin shot cost $600?
Yeah.
So. And it's one of those things like, I think capitalism run amok without restrictions, without boundaries, to just do what it does the best way it does it is inherently destructive, and it's going to kill us all.
Yep. And I mean, I would say the hope from that is like you do see this kind of thing happening organically. I don't know which industry we killed this week, Luke, but
I think it's no, it's not Uber. That was sex scandals.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's see. I think it's the last one I heard about was napkins.
Yeah, and I do have to say, and look, I'm no academic researcher. I have not done a peer-reviewed paper about this. But one consistent trend I see with a lot of these millennials are killing X, Y, or Z stories is it's all about things that would make sense to a person who is thinking in a mindset that, this particular thing is not sustainable. So yeah, napkins don't make sense because, there are other things you can use that you can recycle, that you can reuse.
I mean, cloth napkins. Yeah. If we're going to talk about cloth napkins, cloth napkins are pretty good. Yeah. You can use those for forever.
There's one about like furniture stores or something, and it's like, yeah, why not just like go to the thrift shop for your furniture or build your own furniture out of used materials.
Out of either used materials or refurbish your materials from big trash pickup. Like it's one of those things that I feel our generation has started to pick back up on because of the economic impact in our lives from the Great Recession. Mm-hmm. We're a generation that's rediscovering things like fixing your own stuff.
Yeah, and thrift in general.
Fixing your own stuff, going out and you need a new couch because yours is all worn out. No, you just go reupholster it. Which actually ends up costing less. Mm-hmm. Because you're not buying a whole new couch. You're just buying new padding, maybe some fixed springs, and new fabric. It's not the whole couch. You're saving environmental and economic costs on the wood that is in the couch if the couch isn't made, if it doesn't have a steel frame.
There's this, and I mean, this may sound like a random example, but one of the things we bring up a lot is some of the most common devices are things like smartphones. They're made of a lot of rare earth minerals. You'll get really depressed thinking about what your smartphone is made out of.
I'm already depressed about.
There's a lot of human misery that goes into it.
I'm already depressed about the fact that I have owned 4 iPhones.
Yeah, but there is, there is a prototype out there, and I saw this online several months ago. Basically, this idea is like it's a phone made from like more sustainable parts, and you basically, instead of getting a phone upgrade constantly, you can kind of like switch pieces out. So like, oh, do you want more memory? You can put that in there, or
that concept has been bouncing around for so long.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting for it to happen, but I know it's not going to happen. I mean, at least with where our economic heavy hitters are sitting right now, Apple's not going to let that through. Sony's not going to let that through. Samsung's not going to let that through. These like the major Google's Google is like on the side, but even then they're like, but this is what's working for us right now.
Yeah.
Like it's just one of those things where the major smartphone producers know they will be able to make more money if they sell you something contained in a single piece, in a single solid piece of aluminum that is only accessible, where the innards are only accessible if you literally remove the screen from the phone.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm speaking, I have a little bit of experience fixing smartphones from the last couple of years. And I'm going to tell you, man, like, honestly, investing probably maybe the $200 to $300 in a heat gun, a solder gun, and a screwdriver set is going to save you so much in phone costs.
Oh, and you know that's
100%.
That's part of it too. Is these methods of creation, they're becoming increasingly democratized. Like, you can go on YouTube and find a tutorial for basically anything.
iFixit.com will help you fix pretty much everything. It's which sort of branches off into net neutrality, but I don't want to go there right now.
Oh, yeah.
That's
I was about to say, unless, net neutrality is demolished and they're
let's
slow down all those videos.
I'm going to leave it off to the side because I have a lot of stuff to say about net neutrality.
Yeah. And we'll be talking about that.
Actually, one quick aside.
Yeah.
When I said that net neutrality, I got into a back and forth with a guy on Reddit about net neutrality.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it was fun. I listed some social examples of when people say, oh, that's impossible, you'll never be able to do it. Net neutrality, I think we can agree that net neutrality is totally a social issue. It's 100% a social issue. So I used social issues. This person came back at me with an example that used the DMCA, which in some cases isn't very popular with consumers because companies abuse it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the DMCA is still necessary because it protects independent and it protects independent content creators. It protects like small photo studios.
Just real quick for people listening at home, could you just say real quick what does DMCA stand for?
Oh my goodness, I have to look it up. So hold on, give me a second.
Just give it the appropriate context here.
So the DMCA is the Digital Millennium Copyright Act.
Oh, that's right.
Which was put into place by the Clinton administration in the 90s. And what it really is it's a consumer. It protects companies. It protects people who hold copyrights on intellectual properties, IPs, and other junk. It's a consumer economic law, which it makes sense. Honestly, I have contentions with it because it does get abused by people with power, but it's still necessary to protect the little guy. He used that example about how DMCA is unpopular. So all you have to do is talk to people about it. Because literally how we stop net neutrality is just by being loud, which is really how you get anything. through is just by being loud about it.
The history of social movements.
But really, I just found it really, really funny that I'm just like, no, net neutrality is a social thing, and we need to fight really, really hard for it. It's not dead yet. Yeah. And he's like, well, the DMCA, blah blah blah. I'm like, those aren't even the same. I love it. I love arguing with people on the internet because so many people, and I include myself. I include myself in this. People are really, really fast to show just how dumb they are, and I'm included in that statement. Yeah. I'm not separating myself out from that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think everybody. It's hard not to have like knee-jerk reactions and
hot takes.
And if you do want to do like a kind of slow, researched, thought-out response, then it's like, why haven't you responded yet? Huh? I'm right.
That's when you just get really good at writing fast paragraphs.
Oh yeah. All right. I think we're gonna take a quick break. I know our dear friend Joe should be joining us pretty soon, and he's gonna talk about how loud the Bolsheviks were. Yeah. So it looks like he's outside right now. So we'll be right back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Be apparent, but hunger is a rather prominent issue amongst the student body of Western. The Invisible Need Project is a multifaceted initiative that's aimed to help struggling students. Every 2 weeks, generous people donate their food to the pantry located in their Fawn Student Service buildings or other drop-off locations. All you need to do is grab a reusable bag and grab whatever food you need to help sustain yourself. If anyone's unsure when their next meal will be, or if you have a little extra food you'd be willing to donate, the food pantry is your place. If you're looking to help donate, become a volunteer, or just learn more, call 269-387-4742 or email dosa-inp@wmich.edu for details.
Are you trying to get your local Kalamazoo business name out to the WMU and Greater Kalamazoo communities? Why not do so while supporting Radio Evolution through underwriting and donations? For more information, please visit widrfm.org.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. We're joined today again by one of our favorite guests. He is a local revolutionary here on Western's campus. This is Joe. If you please introduce yourself and the group that you represent.
Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me on, too. My name's Joe Lorenz. I'm a member of the International Youth and Students for Social Equality at WMU. I'm also a member of the Socialist Equality Party. Now, the IYSSE is the youth and student movement for the SEP. We have clubs at campuses all over the U.S. And internationally. We have very active clubs in Germany, in England, and in Sri Lanka, as well as other places. I'm on here today to specifically draw attention to a meeting that we are holding next week, a week from today actually, at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, December 6th. We're holding a public meeting, which is going to be called Why Study the Russian Revolution? It's part of a broader commemoration of the centenary of the Russian Revolution, which happened 100 years ago on November 7th. It was called the October Revolution because the Tsarist Russia at that time was still using the Julian calendar rather than the Gregorian calendar, so they were 13 days behind the rest of the world. And the World Socialist website, which is the most widely read socialist news publication on the internet, has been commemorating the Russian Revolution this year through several different events. In spring, there were 5 lectures delivered online, live, internationally, that focused on the February Revolution and the development of Bolshevik strategy. They were delivered between March and April, and actually now they are bound and published in a book, which you can buy from the publisher at Mering.com, or if you come to our meeting next week, you can pick up the book there. And that meeting, I don't think I gave the location. It's at 7 p.m. next Wednesday. It's going to be in the Bernhard Center in room 209. The World Socialist website continued with the commemoration of the Russian Revolution by doing 4 more lectures this fall, which were given between October and November. And those will soon be bound and published as the second volume to the lectures that were already published from the spring. In addition to that, leading members of the International Committee of the Fourth International, which is the governing body that publishes the World Socialist website, leading members of this have been delivering lectures at campuses across the country. Our lecturer will be Barry Gray. He's the U.S. national editor of the World Socialist website. He has decades of experience in the Trotskyist movement, and he is actually the author of the first of the fall lectures, which was titled From the April Days to the Kornilov Coup, Lenin's The State and Revolution, which took up the theoretical issues that Lenin worked through in his book, The State and Revolution, as well as the history of 1917 in Russia between April and July, when there was a coup attempt, or actually I think it was in August, but there was a coup attempt by General Kornilov that the Bolsheviks and the working class of Petrograd put down. So our lecture on December 6th next week is going to take up the question in the title: why should we study the Russian Revolution? It was the most consequential and progressive event of the 20th century, and you really cannot understand any of the history of the 20th century without understanding the Russian Revolution and its impact on the international working class throughout the world.
Yeah, and you know that really is a very significant question, especially in the last year or two. And you know, we were actually just talking about kind of an awakening of consciousness towards the problems with our current, capitalist system. So, one of the things that really strikes me when you compare, what happened in Russia with the Bolsheviks to what's going on now is there's very similar circumstances, particularly, just the way that economic powers are being consolidated, and how things are escalating on the world stage. So I think a lot more people have been looking towards that history now, certainly a lot more than they used to. And one of the things I was kind of wondering, putting the Russian Revolution into a contemporary context, what can we see from that revolution, and what lessons can we take in building our social movements and a real revolutionary program in the capitalist crisis that we see today?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that it really could, an answer to that could fill an hour-long lecture, probably.
I'm sure it could.
But there are some key strategic lessons to be learned from the Russian Revolution. First of all, the Russian Revolution was indeed a revolution. There are sort of right-wing academics that argue that it was actually a coup, that the Bolsheviks did not have mass support, but this is not supported by fact at all. It's been disproven time and again. But the leading proponents of capitalism just recycle the old lies. There's actually a writer who's published in the New York Times, Sean McMeekin, who recycles some of these lies that were told by a group called the White Guard, which really represented the more fascistic side of the capitalist oligarchy in Russia. And those groups that sort of lost power in the October Revolution said that the Bolsheviks did not have mass support, that they organized a coup behind the backs of the Russian people. But serious, honest historians have shown that the Bolsheviks did have mass support within Petrograd in particular, and that the working class was organized through the Bolshevik Party. Now, why is the Bolshevik Party special? There was a wide array of socialist parties in Russia in 1917. The two parties that actually experienced the biggest benefits from the February Revolution were the Mensheviks and the socialist revolutionaries. Those were two parties that were took a more centrist line. The Mensheviks were part of the Second International, which was the governing body of all of the socialist parties in Europe up until 1914. With the outbreak of World War I, the Second International collapsed. And the Bolshevik Party stood intransigently in opposition to all of the social democratic parties, to the Second International. Lenin called for the formation of a Third International based on leading the international working class to socialist revolution. And that sounds sort of like where's the contemporary lesson in that, I guess, is the question.
I don't mean to, you can finish. I'm sorry. I kind of, a question popped in my head about that. So, we're kind of in a political situation now among the left where, there's a lot of debate about the solution. And some people think we need to, infiltrate the existing, bourgeois parties, somehow, enact like a third party to work within the current system. And then, there's also this line of thinking that we need to do something completely outside the system altogether. So when you look at it from like a contemporary context, how would you like kind of compare and contrast the political situation the left finds itself in today with what was going on with the October Revolution back in 1917?
Yeah, so that brings up a question that many people were working through in 1917 and leading up to 1917, and that people are working through right now, which is reform or revolution. Can capitalism be reformed, or is a revolution required to overthrow capitalism? And the answer to that can be found in a materialist analysis of capitalism. There are major contradictions built into the capitalist system that cannot be worked around by reforms. There's this contradiction of the social character of production versus its subordination to the private profit interests of a tiny sliver of the population. This cannot be overcome. There's a history of reforms in the 20th century, the New Deal, that attempted to reform this and have steadily been eroded since then. And actually, to bring up something I mentioned earlier, those reforms, such as the New Deal, would never have taken place had the Russian Revolution not taken place in 1917, which frightened the bourgeoisie of the U.S. To the point where they were willing to sort of give a slice of the pie away to the workers of the United States to prevent a Bolshevik revolution.
That was actually one of FDR's big selling points or pitches with the New Deal. Was like, we need this is in order to stop what happened in Russia. It's almost more like a kind of a pressure release valve, and that's how they put it. And in the run of Bernie Sanders last year, it was very similar in that way. And it's interesting watching it because granted, I'm really just starting to study the Russian Revolution more recently, but even back then, I thought about his run in historical terms, and like he was basically making that same warning that FDR was. It's like we need to do a New Deal type program, pressure relief valve, et cetera, and that ended up, of course, being what's the word? Rigged against him and that movement. So what we have, especially among the youth right now, is it seems like this kind of decision between trying to fix the system that we are in now, or what I think is kind of inevitable at this point, that the system is going to collapse, and figuring out how to build something new upon that. So a lot of people talk about like late-stage capitalism coming to an end. What lessons can we take from the Russian Revolution in trying to build that kind of new structure that is not going to fall into the same traps that American capitalism has?
Okay, yeah, that's also a really good question too. I want to go back to one thing. In pointing out some of the major contradictions of capitalism that are built into it, and it gets to this question of reform or revolution. You cannot reform that first contradiction of the social character of production versus its versus private ownership of production. You can't reform that. And the other issue is the international character of production, the fact that production is now organized over a global scale. But the world is still divided into this archaic system of nation states that are competing with one another for raw materials, for cheap labor, and for trade routes. And this drives the most notably the imperialist powers of the world into war with one another. And this is very much bound up with what you called the downfall of capitalism. But this is another major strategic lesson that can be learned from the Russian Revolution, is that that won't happen on its own. The solution to those contradictions from the capitalist class is war, and the solution to those problems from the working class is socialist revolution. But socialist revolution requires a conscious political leadership that's guided on Marxist principles, and that does not develop spontaneously within the working class. It must be brought to the working class, and that's the job of the Revolutionary Party. That's why the IYSSE and the Socialist Equality Party has been organizing these meetings, because the greatest danger right now is the vast gulf that exists between the consciousness of the working class and the tasks that it's confronted with. Only the working class can solve these major problems.
You know, that's very true, and you know it's very interesting. One of the things I've seen in the last couple of years is people are no longer willing to ingest propaganda as much as they used to. I mean, granted, everybody's going around screaming about Russia, for example, but
fake news, fake news.
Yeah. But what we see is, people are more willing to question the establishment line, but it's kind of facilitating this historical kind of political education. You saw one of the most interesting circumstances I think we're in now is, they were bold enough when the USSR fell. It was like, oh, it's the end of history. Capitalism won. Da-da-da-da-da. When, really the weaknesses of the Soviet Union had a lot more to do with specifically how it was run as a bureaucracy and Stalin and so on and so forth. But, excuse me. What we're seeing now is kind of a return, a resurgence. Socialism, communism, and this history has been actively suppressed for decades, and you're starting to see a resurgence of it now. I say, what are the best methods in order to keep facilitating that education, strengthening a strong, Marxist socialist left? Granted, one could say the internet's been a great tool to do this, but that's also at risk coming in the next couple weeks. So, what has been some of most effective ways in this kind of new paradigm we're in, where the flaws of capitalism can no longer kind of point to the Soviet Union as a counterexample? How has that helped facilitate the growth of leftist movements, and what needs to be done to really kind of help continue that to grow?
Okay, yeah, you raised a lot of important issues there. You are right that I think there's been sort of two faces to the history of world capitalism after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. First, there was the sort of capitalist triumphalism that you were pointing to, that historians like Francis Fukuyama wrote about the end of history, or Eric Hobsbawm wrote about the short 20th century. Basically, these historians wanted their readers to believe that that socialism was tried in the 20th century in Russia and it failed, and that's the end of that. All we can hope for now is gradual reform within capitalism. There has been, but since the dissolution of the Soviet Union, what have we seen? There has been virtually a quarter century of war without end of war. The United States has sought to offset its economic decline through military force in Iraq, and then in Serbia, then in Afghanistan, in Iraq a second time. Under the Obama administration, 2 wars in the Middle East were expanded to 7 countries. And now you see, spearheaded by the Democratic Party, an anti-Russian, hysterical, really a drive to war.
Not to mention the saber rattling with North Korea.
And this, like I said, it's the response of the ruling class to the historic breakdown of capitalism. To get back to those lies of the historians about socialism in the 20th century, one thing that these historians really just entirely avoid is the Trotskyist movement, which the left opposition was formed by Leon Trotsky in 1924, I think, and in 1938 the Fourth International was founded by Leon Trotsky, which was in opposition to the Stalinist bureaucratic degeneration of the Soviet Union. And the Trotskyist movement has really kept Marxism alive. If you want to know what Marxism is in contemporary politics, you need to look to the Trotskyist movement. You need to look to the World Socialist website. And then that brings up another really important part of what you were talking about is one of the major strengths of our organization is the internet. And like you said, that is under attack right now. There's, of course, the net neutrality undoing, which is ongoing right now, but actually this is part of a broader effort to censor the internet, which I don't know how many of your listeners know about, but Google is actually actively involved in censoring left-wing anti-war websites right now. And actually the highest censoring of Google is going towards the World Socialist website. I can maybe explain a little bit of what I'm talking about here.
I think it was a 56% decline in internet traffic?
Yeah. So in April of this year, Ben Gomez, one of the CEOs of Google, announced that they were implementing a new algorithm that would combat the fake news, which became a story during the 2016 presidential election. And Ben Gomez wrote that that Google was going to promote authoritative content and downgrade what he said was stuff people don't want to see. Now, I don't know how Google is supposed to know what people want to see or not, but what ended up happening between April and August of this year is that 13 leading anti-war, progressive or socialist left-wing websites experienced a 55% drop in traffic from Google. So they can measure how many website visits are coming from Google clicks. And for those 13 websites, which included WikiLeaks, it included Alternet, Truthout, Counterpunch, and the World Socialist website. And The Intercept, Democracy Now! Actually, the World Socialist website was targeted the most heavily, though. They experienced almost a 75% drop in traffic from Google. And this is bound up, like I said, with other efforts to really curtail any sort of oppositional viewpoints from reaching a wide audience. Another thing that happened just this week is the Koch Brothers essentially bought Time Magazine. Now, this is actually I just have a list of other major news media and their ownership. The Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos. whose wealth just surpassed $100 million this week.
Also has a contract with the CIA.
Also, yes. Rupert Murdoch and his family control over 120 newspapers across 5 countries, including the Wall Street Journal. Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim owns 17% of New York Times stock, and Warren Buffett owns about 70 daily newspapers.
And that's not to mention the FCC getting rid of regulations that keep ownership of various medias out of the hands of singular owners. Regulations that keep the consolidation of information dissemination out of central control. Like it. They're trying to get rid of a regulation, or they have gotten rid of a regulation. I don't know where it's at.
If it's the one about news stations no longer have to operate in the areas they serve.
That's Sinclair, like 100%.
Yeah, Sinclair is also running a monopoly. Their monopoly got strengthened recently by the FCC.
I mean, but it's regulation that keeps Sinclair from owning both News Channel 3 and the local NPR affiliate.
Yeah.
Or not Michigan Radio, but it keeps them from owning the commercial radio stations, the commercial music radio stations, and those outlets as well. But you get rid of that regulation. Well, now consolidation of media information is coming from 4 sources,
and it has a very visceral effect. I was watching Channel 3 sometime around Thanksgiving with my family, and they had this guy come on to talk about how great the Republican tax bill is on during local news programming. So, like, this has a tangible propaganda.
Was it one of their must runs?
Yes, it was one of their must runs.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. But. Yeah. So like you say, Joe, like it is certainly not going to get any worse before it gets better. And again, like the censorship of these websites, this is something that's happening with net neutrality. That's the corporate censorship we already have. So,
and actually, to underscore one point about this, I think we should see this really as a sign of how weak the ruling class believes that it is right now. It's a sign of fear that they want to stop any spread of oppositional viewpoints, because they know that those oppositional viewpoints have a wide audience that's eager to hear them. Actually, I think you've probably already talked about these statistics on this program before, but recently, there was a poll done by a right-wing think tank called Victims of Communism that polled millennials, and their poll showed that 51% preferred either socialism or communism to capitalism. They talked about this like it was something really scary.
Oh my God!
Yeah. And in addition to that,
the millennials don't believe in capitalism. What are we gonna do? It's almost like your capitalism and your boom bust cycles have put us through economic disparities, especially with the increasing wealth inequality in our country. Maybe we're looking at it and going, this really isn't working out for most of us.
Yeah.
We're looking at Kevin's like, that's going to be no for me, dog. Sorry.
And this is actually coming after there was a European poll done that was also targeting millennials, and it asked them, would you actively participate in a large-scale uprising against the generation in power if it happened in the next days or months? Now, obviously, they're sort of priming the people they're questioning to make it seem like this is a conflict between generations. It's actually a conflict between classes, first and foremost. But 53% of European millennials said yes to that question. They would actively participate in a large-scale uprising. And in France and Greece, where capitalist rule is turning ever more closely to authoritarianism, it was actually more than 60% that said yes, they would participate.
Oh yeah, and I would say if you're interested in the vitality of social movements and kind of something to compare it to, we've reported a lot sometimes on like what happens in France, and especially how they organize around labor issues, and it is miles ahead of the kind of organizing that we do here in the States.
Well, that's partially because our government keeps us in a state of panic 100% of the time.
That's true. Yeah.
Hey, we're going to take your health care away. What? No, Hey, we're going to kill net neutrality. Wait, no, you were just going to take away my health care last week. Like, now no, don't do that. Hey, by the way, we want to take away your health care again. What? No, hey, stop. Like, we don't have time. There's no.
Well, I think there's certain tactics that it used to happen in America that don't really. Like, now it's a lot about like petitions, going out in the streets with signs, but the strikes and boycotts, those are tools that are a lot more effective against the capitalist class that you really don't see being used all that commonly anymore.
Wait, you mean like the Republican boycott on Keurig, where they buy Keurig machines and smash them, right?
See, that's a good bit of propaganda. You say, buy it first and then break. But
that brings up an interesting point about the fall in strike activity in the United States. Actually, in the 1930s, there were massive strike waves that went around the United States, and actually in 1934 there was a Teamsters strike that was led by Trotskyists, and any auto workers in Michigan know the importance of the 1937 Flint sit-down strike. These were workers that were inspired by the Russian Revolution, and in many cases were led either by Trotskyists, like I said, or by members of the Communist Party, which at that time since we're talking about the Russian Revolution, I should make a point on the Stalinist degeneration of the Soviet Union, that this is also, like I said, bound up with understanding the history of the 20th century, not only understanding the revolution in 1917, but understanding the civil war that followed it, in which 14 different armies invaded the Soviet Union to try to smash the workers' state, and then the slow bureaucratic degeneration that happened, in which Stalin and this layer of sort of upper middle class bureaucrats gained control of the party, and then from 1936 to 1938, there were show trials conducted in which basically the entire generation of Bolshevik revolutionaries from 1917 were killed by Stalin and the bureaucracy within the Soviet Union. And so for people to identify socialism with Stalinism is really a grotesque misrepresentation of history, because actually the Stalinists were the greatest counter-revolutionary force in the Soviet Union. And actually, Leon Trotsky was writing before he was killed by Stalinist agents that the Soviet Union either would have a political revolution overthrowing the bureaucracy, or it would go through a capitalist restoration, which did happen in 1991.
Yeah, well, restoration. I mean, that's a very mild way to put it. Was it more like disaster capital, neoliberal shock therapy? So, another way to put it. But yeah. So where we're at now, we see a lot of people again. I kind of brought this up earlier. Have kind of been awakened to these ideas by the Sanders campaign. I think to a great extent, there's been kind of an erasure of this kind of history. Even a lot of radical leftist circles, kind of anarchism is like the that's the stopping point, and a lot of the historical materialism, Marxism, doesn't necessarily get discussed. So, there's definitely a huge opportunity right now, I think, for people to really understand like this historical basis and this comparison. So, particularly, we've had discussions on the show here talking about people who want to dim in or dim exit, and I started doing some of the historical thinking, going back to examples like Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition or Dennis Kucinich or Howard Dean, or even like comparing it to what Bernie Sanders doing now, where he's a lot more outspoken about shuffling people in the Democratic Party. And what I will hear from some people is like, oh, we'll work this time because we're organizing more consistently or because of internet tools or something. What would you say to somebody whose idea is to somehow organize people into the Democratic Party and somehow make it more anti-capitalistic or progressive?
Well, I would definitely recommend doing what you're doing. Look at the history of this. The Democratic Party, through a historical analysis, really should be thought of as the graveyard of social opposition movements, going back to the populist or the progressive movements, the trade unionist movements that came out of those strike waves in the 1930s, the civil rights movements of the 50s and 60s, the anti-Vietnam protest movement, even the 2003 Iraq War protest movement or Occupy Wall Street. All of these movements were absorbed into the Democratic Party and then smothered.
Did you ever see that internet, was it the meme factory? Occupy Democrats. Oh, God. I'm sorry, go on. But.
No, yeah, I think, and then it's also important to, when you're going through this history, to understand it through class relations, because the class struggle exists objectively. Classes exist objectively. They are determined historically by the mode of production, and you can understand that the Democratic Party is one of the two capitalist parties in the United States. It cannot be reformed. It's tied to capitalism by 1,000 small threads, and you can't get rid of all of them. What was I going to say? Oh, the Bernie Sanders movement sought to tap into the opposition of millions of people to the capitalist system. He called for a political revolution to overthrow the billionaire class. And what he ended up doing in his actual political program was tying those millions of people to the Democratic Party and preventing a upsurge of the working class. I think I brought Leon Trotsky's History of the Russian Revolution with me because I wanted to read one paragraph from it. It's a very long book that goes through the Russian Revolution that I would highly recommend to anybody to read. But in the preface, he describes what a revolution is, and I think that it would be good for people to hear this. So I'm just going to read one paragraph from this book. He writes, "The most indubitable feature of a revolution is the direct interference of the masses in historical events. In ordinary times, the state, be it monarchical or democratic, elevates itself above the nation, and history is made by specialists in that line of business: kings, ministers, bureaucrats, parliamentarians, journalists, But at those crucial moments when the old order becomes no longer endurable to the masses, they break over the barriers, excluding them from the political arena, sweep aside their traditional representatives, and create, by their own interference, an initial groundwork for a new regime. Whether this is good or bad, we leave to the judgment of moralists. We ourselves will take the facts as they are given by the objective course of development. The history of a revolution is for us, first of all, a history of the forcible entrance of the masses into the realm of rulership over their own destiny. I think that aside from being really beautifully written, is an important thing to judge people's political program when they use the word revolution. Are they talking about revolution, or are they talking about reform? Because I think, as those statistics that I was discussing earlier show, people are actually interested in a revolution, in overthrowing the capitalist system. And political parties will say whatever they can to divert that and turn it back into reformism. But the masses need to become aware of these things. And really the only way that can be done is by a critical understanding of history, and in particular of the Russian Revolution, because that shows us in a positive example how there can be a workers' state established, how there can be a path to socialism. And then since you mentioned anarchism, I also really want to call out to any anarchists who might be listening to this that I think coming to our talk on Wednesday of next week, December 6th at 7 p.m. in Bernhard 209, I think that meeting will be really important. I don't think many people actually have a great understanding of the differences between anarchism and genuine revolutionary socialism. And these differences came out very clearly over the course of events in the Russian Revolution. And our speaker, Barry Gray, is actually really an expert on these issues.
All right, thank you. I hear the caller coming in. It's that we usually don't answer during the show, but I will say it's about 6:20. I know we don't want to keep you here forever, Joe, but and there are a couple other things we want to talk about on the program. So just real quick, what the time, date, and details?
Yeah, and once again, I thank you for having me on. This was really important. The meeting is Why Study the Russian Revolution? The Contemporary Significance of the Event That Changed World History. It's Wednesday, December 6th at 7 p.m., and it will be in the Bernhard Center on WMU's campus in room 209.
All right, great, thank you. And I know you mentioned you had to meet up with some friends, but if not, we're about to dig in and talk about our Cosecha brothers and sisters, that the racist statue in the park, and tear apart that horrible oligarchic tax plan.
It's not a plan.
Well, okay,
it is a plan.
Yeah,
no, it's a plan. It's just not a good. I don't know.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, great. Thank you, Joe. You have yourself a great day. All right, we're going to take a quick little break. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for that revolution solution.
Enviromax 30-second spot. Our planet's ecosystem balances delicately between man, animals, and the forces of nature. That's why Fuji created Enviromax batteries. No cadmium, no mercury, no PVC. And packaged with 75% recycled materials. So choose maximum power with minimum impact when you're ready to turn over a new leaf.
Wider is proud to be supported by Pedal Bicycle. Pedal Bicycle has 2 locations on 611 West Michigan Ave and 185 Romans Road. More information can be found at pedalbicycle.com.
All right, we are back, and by the way, I do want to apologize. We had a call in, and we don't. It's not really a show where like we patch calls in, mostly because I don't know how to do it. I'll be honest.
I'm not sure we have a way to do it in the studio on the studio phone.
I don't think so either.
I'm sure that there could be a way that we could actually do that if we wanted to put some effort into it, but that would require some investment on our part.
Yeah. And I wasn't exactly sure where you're going with this, sir, and again, I apologize. It was kind of a dissenting opinion to what our last guest was just talking about, and I do want to say, like, we'll give anybody a platform on the show. I'll say, like, it should be like anti-establishment. Like, if somebody wanted to come on here and say like, "Oh, the status quo is just fine," I'd yell them out of the studio. But,
I mean, you're welcome to come in and say the status quo is just fine. Then you will have 2 people arguing with you.
Oh yeah.
At least two.
And it's like we've had libertarians on the show and stuff before. It's basically like, I mean, as long as you're not a Nazi.
We do have a line.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
We have a line, and it's fascists.
No Richard Spencers. Which, oh, by the way, I wish I'll get a little bit of time to talk about this. U of M is doing a big push right now because the administration is considering letting Richard Spencer come and speak at the show, or not. Sorry,
they're considering letting Richard Spencer speak on campus. And Facebook. I believe this is what the story you were getting to. Facebook removed one of the events that the student organization that is resisting Spencer's appearance there, they removed it from Facebook. They removed they deleted the event. And like, people, I'm on Facebook all the time. Like, I use it. I can't help it. Part of it, I have no illusions in my mind that Facebook doesn't want the best for me. I am a source of monetization for them. They've come out and admitted that they work openly with the government to spy on you.
yeah, they did.
So they're not. Facebook isn't your friend. Mark Zuckerberg is a dick.
You know that app that they're coming up with to show you which Russian ads you saw during the election? Could they also come out with like an app that shows you all the times you should have been speaking about voter suppression instead? I would love that.
Yeah, I'd love that too.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about...
Actually, statistically, so it was $100,000 in Facebook ads, and you basically you had a better chance of it was like seeing that ad. You had a chance of seeing like 0.0001%,
and that's not even considering the fact that you can localize and target Facebook ads.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you might not have even been in a market or in any of the algorithms that would have shown you that ad in the first place. Mm-hmm. And some of the ads that they actually came out like, hey, by the way, this was a Russian ad that they used. Some of them were so ridiculous.
If you've seen
that, I'm just like, how do you look at this and not go, this is ridiculous, this is a meme, this isn't serious?
It's like what, Hillary staring off with the devil or Jesus or something.
Yeah.
And there's another one with Bernie Sanders' coloring book where he's all muscly, and like, I'm looking at this and they're like sitting in Congress and they've got this up on like a canvas or stylus or whatever, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, are we living in an Onion article?
We are living in an Onion article. Donald Trump is the president.
Yeah, we are. Some mischievous Onion writer from like 2005
is actually God.
Got godlike powers at some point. So anyway, to go back, so their page did end up getting restored because enough people raised a ruckus. But one of the things I wanted to bring up, and if I could find that page, what was it? Resist Richard Spencer. Okay, well, I might have to paraphrase it a bit, but so the students are coordinating a week-long actions to put pressure on the administration to deny.
They're in the middle of it, actually.
They're in the middle of it, yeah. And at one point, the administration put out this very dubious response to their organizing, and essentially it was like, we appreciate. It was geared towards their teach-ins. It's like, we are very proud of our students for organizing these teach-ins here today. We do hope that students and professors do not cancel their classes. But I mean, we do prefer that there's a good dialogue that's going on here.
There's a good dialogue. Please don't upset the regular happenings of the university. Please continue to give us your money and do not question our decisions when we allow a Nazi to speak on campus.
Yeah. And here's the thing that maddens me the most. And the students called them out for that. That kind of just. Because what they said is like, no, that is the gravity. It's not like presenting both sides or being instructive. It's about protecting the students there, because Richard Spencer brings gross Nazi people with him, and there will be violence of some kind on campus if that fool shows up. And there's been some other discussions about like the normalizations of Nazis, like that was a New York Times article recently. And
I've seen a couple like counterpunches to those reactions. Like, hey, no, dude, Nazis have been here, and they're normal. They're people. They're here. Well, they're not. It's not new.
It's a very privileged statement, because it's like to the readership of the New York Times.
Like it's true.
That nice white liberals like, oh my God, honey, did you know that? Like.
Did you know that Nazis also buy loaves of bread from the supermarket?
They do. Oh, I thought they just grew their own in the backwoods.
I didn't. I thought they just survived on the droppings of wild animals.
No.
I thought they were hideous barbarians. I had no concept that they were normal, regular people.
Some of them wear regular clothes. And, let's go back to the regular clothes thing, because Richard Spencer, he does this on purpose. It's all about respectability politics, and he comes up to the administration using dense vocabulary and wearing a three-piece suit, and that's supposed to be like, oh, well,
It's intellectualist camouflage is what it is.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
It's elitist intellectualist camouflage.
Like, would the administration even be considering this racist poop bag if he was wearing like a hood or a Nazi armband, which it's exactly what he is. He just, and this is what drives me crazy. This is a deliberate strategy of white supremacists, is to make themselves look presentable.
I mean, this is literally what the Nazis did in Germany. Is make yourself look like the more respectable party. Make yourselves look like the more reasonable, more rational side of the discussion. When the discussion is, hey, we want to kill a bunch of people. We believe in the superiority of the Aryan race, and honestly, if you're not Aryan, we could give a heck less whether or not you live or die. Honestly, we'll probably make you die. Like, that's not a discussion. So, like, it's classic. It's classic. Like, white supremacist strategy to the core.
All right.
All you have to do is like halfway pay attention to the World War II sections in high school, and you'd know this.
All right. So I just want to bring up real quick, if you want to find out more, you can go to their Facebook page, which is up. Stop Spencer at the University of Michigan, and you can follow what other actions they're doing through the week. And I'm not exactly sure when Spencer. It's like,
I don't know if they've made a discussion. I honestly don't know if they've made a decision on whether or not they'll let him speak there yet.
Yep. Well, if they do, and if there's a date, we'll let you know when it is.
I believe that the initial outrage was the fact that the administration was going to even consider it in the first place.
Yeah, so I'm hoping those students can get through to those. Oh, man, like, the last couple of weeks has taught me a lot about old white people, and just
honestly, I'm afraid of becoming an old white people now because of this.
Man. Yeah.
Like, I'm honestly afraid of it.
Am I going to get to a point where I defend racist statues because they're Art Deco?
It's not even Art Deco, it's brutalism. It's not Art Deco.
Yeah, okay, we do have to take a quick little break, but that's a good segue into our next topic. So when we get back, we're going to talk about the racist statue in Bronson Park. You're listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Alvan Humane Society is a non-for-profit, no-kill animal shelter that has been serving Allegan, Van Buren, and surrounding areas for almost 50 years. They are hosting their Cares Fund Drive and are over halfway to their $500,000 goal. Alvan can currently house around 30 dogs and 100 cats. Money raised from the Cares campaign will go to build a new shelter, which will expand this capacity by 20%. Alvan Humane Society has 20 dogs and 40 cats that are microchipped, spayed and neutered, and fully vaccinated, ready for adoption right now. To adopt a pet, donate to the Cares Fund Drive, or find out more, feel free to visit them on the web at www.al-van.org.
Wider FM is supported in part by local Kalamazoo and Greater West Michigan businesses like yours. If you are interested in getting your business's name on the air while supporting Radio Evolution, please visit widerfm.org for underwriting packages and other support options.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. So let's talk a little bit about the statue. Now, I'm bringing up the Fountain of the Pioneers, and we we're talking about it quite a bit last week on the show, and I'll refer back to that. It's on YouTube. Me and Eugene Strong had a pretty sprawling hour-long conversation about it. But I do want to touch on a couple of points. Fountain of the Pioneers is down in Bronson Park. It depicts a pioneer, like an English white settler colonialist, standing over a native with a club. On the city commission meeting on last Monday, they were supposed to vote on whether to take it down or keep it up, and some of the arguments in the fore camp would basically there's a lot of logistical problems with removing the statue. A lot of basically saying it's hard, it'll be so hard. Also, about 25 very rich white people who had donated money for the restoration of Bronson Park, about $2.1 million, all expressed the importance of making sure it's there to preserve our history, and it creates discussion, and basically saying like it helps teach people about the genocide of the native. While about 25 native folks and their allies showed up saying, yeah, we don't really want to see that in the middle of a public park, but it's Art Deco, and as some of them pointed out, they invested about $500,000 in fixing and renovating that statue. So let me say it again. A bunch of rich liberal white people put $500,000 into renovating a racist colonial statue. And they all had their, nice reasons for talking, preserving the Art Deco statue. But, and so the vote was put off for about 90 days. Shannon was really the only commissioner who came out strongly for removing the statue. Everyone else was extremely wishy-washy. Anderson brought up some really disturbing crap about, like, basically the whole, well, natives were vicious too kind of stuff. Anyway, on Thanksgiving night, somebody made an artistic statement and put basically a cardboard hatchet in the head of the pioneer with a bunch of red paint dripping down. And it was very interesting how the local media covered it, because I'll give to the credit of Fox News, they reached out to some native folks and got their perspective on it. MLive referred to it as a tomahawk, which is kind of problematic. And
why can't we just use hand axe like everybody else does?
Yeah, really. But ended up getting removed, and again, like I personally, I was the one who found it. I took a picture of it. It ended up getting shared on social media and amongst all the news crews. And, here's a funny thing though. When Fox covered it, they just had a picture of the statue with my name next to it.
New profile picture.
Yeah, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you, like, I'm outspoken. I would put my dang darn initials on that thing. But so yeah, that was interesting. And also wanted to mention, shout out to our homies with Movimiento Cosecha, because during the Macy's Day Parade in New York City, there was they did a disruption. Several actually DACA recipients stood in the middle of the parade and attempted to obstruct, and ended up getting a lot of national press. And several members of and activists from Kalamazoo took part in it. I'll read a little bit from the article. This was Obama created. Okay, so they're talking about the DREAM program and how Trump rescinded DACA, which allows children not born in the United States to basically work and go to university here in the States, even though they don't have like a social security number, etc. Trump's decision inspired widespread protest and the creation of a Kalamazoo Movimiento Cosecha branch. The group organized a demonstration of civil disobedience in downtown Kalamazoo, resulting in the arrest of 8 people, including myself. And Movimiento Cosecha KZU member Ava Alvarez said the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade was chosen due to its large national audience and to highlight what she called a hypocritical holiday. Ultimately, it was a call to action for Congress and the American people, she said. Families across the country traditionally enjoy television broadcasts of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Meanwhile, Alvarez said families with DACA recipients are facing the fear of being torn apart by deportation. We want the public to understand our need to have that family unity, she said. And she said, we're taking things to a national level. The power of the people can make that difference. Going to New York City and getting this message out to thousands of people across the country is a powerful thing. So, really big kudos. I personally know a lot of the organizers who took part in that protest on Macy's Day Parade. So, I salute you. Thank you so much for going out there and doing that. Luke, did you have anything to add to that?
Not really, no. I'm in the position of white guy privilege where I think colonialism is bad and we should do everything we can to dismantle it. And otherwise, my life hasn't been negatively affected by it at all, so I would rather just see improvement for everybody than, the celebration of terrible things.
Oof. So, why don't we get on to our last topic of the show?
Oh, my goodness, this tax plan.
Yeah.
Oh, let me dig my claws into this.
And there are so many aspects of this that are just awful, but, we're broadcasting out of a university station. I think it's important to bring up something that could affect a lot of people here. The lifetime learning credit under this proposal would be eliminated. And basically, what that does, it sets up waivers and reductions so that grad students who a lot of the time are basically working at the university, they'll be doing a lot of teaching. It waives and provides reductions in their tuitions that helps university students basically like the money that they get, the stipend money that they get is pretty minuscule. It's around like $10,000 a year.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
So like these grad students are effectively already, like right now under our current tax system, living underneath the poverty line in order to teach and to do their studies. And what this tax proposal says is like, oh, let's get rid of that. And so it results in essentially taking away all of this money that they get in order to go to school. And for students at a private university, that's going to be even worse of a problem because the tuition's even higher.
It treats tuition as taxable income.
Yeah, exactly. Or these these reduction grants and such. Yeah.
Yeah, the removal of these is essentially going, hey, we know you get a lot of money from the university to do this, and that's cool and all, but we're going to treat that as income, and now you have to pay taxes on it. The tax plan also gets rid of SALT, the state and local taxes deductions, so you can deduct your state taxes and your local taxes from your federal taxes, because the concept is you shouldn't be taxed twice for the same things, right? Mm-hmm. So if the state taxes you for the intrastate highway, and your local municipality is taxing you for local roads, and the government is taxing you on, and the government takes taxes for the interstate highway. What it means, like, you could deduct the taxes you pay for your local roads and your state roads from the federal roads. Now it's nope. Now you got to pay your taxes for your local roads, your taxes for your state roads, and also all of that money that you use to pay that. Oh, that's included in the amount we're going to tax you for federal roads, which doesn't make sense, because you're paying I'm probably breaking it down in probably the most idiotic way, but
I mean, it's true though.
But you're being taxed on money that you don't have now because you're paying that money in taxes to other governmental entities.
Yeah.
You're getting taxed on money you don't have.
It's everything in this bill is designed to, it's one thing, because, sometimes progressives have a hard time arguing oh, well, they're reducing taxes for everyone, and we'll have to be like, yeah, well, it's the wealthiest that get the biggest boost, though.
Anyone who makes less than $75,000 a year under this new tax plan is going to get screwed. Currently, the Republicans pushing this tax plan are pushing it based on the fact that, oh, well, you'll actually see more in your taxes in the next year or 2 or 3. But over the next 10, when you look at the length of time this tax, this tax structure if we impose this tax structure and we take a look at it over a period of time that actually has more of an impact than the next year, the next 2 years, the next 10 years, our budget deficit balloons by, $1.4 trillion?
Oh, yeah, that's a big thing, too.
Trillion with a T.
Aren't the Republicans always talking about
the Republicans are the ones of the deficit hawks, right?
Yeah.
The Republicans are supposed to be the deficit hawks. They're supposed to be like, well, we're not supposed to spend more money than we take in. We're supposed to balance the budget in order to make sure that everything gets funded the way it's funded, and we're not unnecessarily taking taxes away from people, which is what tax returns are. That's their whole thing, but their own tax plan balloons the deficit over the next 10 years by $1 trillion.
About $1.5 trillion, actually.
Which is how many years of the Iraq War? 2?
It's a bit roundabout.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, the Republicans have absolutely no right. If you call yourself a Republican, you support this tax plan, you support this party, you have absolutely no right to call yourself a fiscal conservative. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. You don't know what that term means. You don't know jack about what it implies about you and your economic policies and your economic ideologies. If you support this tax plan, you officially cannot call yourself a fiscal conservative.
It's interesting how I've seen there are some conservatives railing against this for that reason. Joe Walsh actually came out against it, and he's usually a stalwart.
Joe, I don't pay attention to what this white screwball has to say at any time ever. Walsh, yeah.
But it's funny because he tweeted out he felt all betrayed and stuff. I can't believe my party is doing this.
I'm sorry, Joe Walsh. Yeah. If you couldn't believe that, I've got some waterfront property to sell you out in California. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I got that for you. I totally won't be underwater, literally, in the next 25 years.
And another thing it does, which has gotten a lot of attention, it removes the individual mandate. Now, here's the thing. I used to be torn on this. One of the things that irritated me about Obamacare, especially as a younger working class person, was, I'd get it would come out of my tax return, or I'd have to pay a little in if I wasn't getting health insurance. And I remember at the time, that's kind of bogus. You're asking the poorest people who can't afford health insurance to pay more in, and there is a certain dimension of that too, but part of the problem with that is you remove the individual mandate, especially under this tax structure, and you're making it way more expensive for everyone else to afford health insurance. So it's like a domino effect.
Yeah. The whole thing, my biggest problem with the individual mandate, is it's a workaround to subsidize healthcare providers or health insurance providers in order to keep health insurance costs low.
Right.
That's the whole point of the individual mandate is you buy insurance or you pay money to the government is the money you pay to the government from that fee essentially goes into the government subsidies that get handed to the private insurance companies that provide the health care.
Well, yeah, exactly.
It's a roundabout way of taking your tax dollars and paying them to private corporations. When in actuality, it would, like, if we just instituted a socialized single-payer healthcare system, we eliminate that. We eliminate private health insurance. We essentially eliminate private health insurance from being the main provider of healthcare to people, and you end up with a system that costs like more than half less than the current system. You save thousands of dollars in taxes because you're not paying insurance premiums. Like, it's the whole concept is just a roundabout way of paying of giving public dollars to private entities. And it's the only way that the system works, because the only way insurance works is if everybody pools their money in order to take care of the people who need the help the most.
So, yeah, it basically gives, like, you know, the Sophie's choice to anybody who's poor. It's like, well, they can choose not to have health insurance. It's like, no, you can even, it's like, everyone should have health insurance.
It's one of those things where it's like, if you're going to take money out of my taxes or give me increased taxes because I don't have health insurance, then why don't we just, if I'm going to be paying this anyway, why don't we just have a single payer healthcare system, man? This could just be part of the increased taxes I pay, which overall, the grand scale of things, when we talk about the number of working people in America, like, honestly, not that much per person to just have a socialized healthcare system.
Yeah, this is how backwards things have gotten people. Is like, this tax bill literally is going to disenfranchise lower class people from having health insurance.
The individual mandate is school choice vouchers for healthcare.
Oh, that's a good analogy. That's exactly
what it is. The individual mandate is the school choice voucher for healthcare. Like,
and let's not forget too that, like, Obamacare was originally Romney Care. The only reason they tried to dismantle Obamacare,
the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act was originally it was a Republican think tank idea, man. This is a freaking
Heritage Foundation.
The Heritage Foundation back in the 80s proposed this. Yeah. Reagan proposed this. This is a Republican idea, and Republicans are all like, it's so bad. It's like, Obama gave you exactly what you freaking wanted, man.
So, I don't know if any of our, like, I think both Stabenow and Peters are against this, but who knows? Like, Peters and Stabenow have been doing some stuff lately. It's like, Gary Peters is one of the ones who confirmed Agit Pi, by the way, if you're following the net neutrality thing.
I didn't know that until, like, last week. And gotta say, Gary, man, it does not look... I will run a one-man campaign against you based on that simple fact. I'll be honestly, if Title II protections from the Communications Act of 1936, because that's the context of net neutrality, like, people, it links back to that back and forth I had with that dude on Reddit, because, people just mention the Title II protections for net neutrality. They don't talk about which. It's net neutrality is protected by by Title II of the Communications Act of 1936, which lists ISPs as common carriers, which means they cannot throttle signal from anywhere. They can't deny access to signal anywhere. They can't deny access from signal to the user anywhere. Like, they are common carriers. It's the law that, helped establish the phone line infrastructure in America. So the guy who argued with me, like, he used the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, I'm just like, we're not talking about the Title II protections of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. We're talking about Title II protections of something that protects the best free speech platform in history.
All right, so we got about 2.5 minutes left. So let's reel it back to the tax plan thing.
Yeah, but anyway.
So what it looks like, it looks like a similar situation with healthcare. It's gonna like come down to the wire to see if the Republicans will actually vote for this. I think there's a lot of sensible ones who understand, like, yeah, this is like the conservative, top-down program pushed to its absolute logical conclusion, but people, like, somebody brought up this good point. This is the kind of problem that you can't hide forever, and people are eventually going to see it literally see it in their tax returns. So, any politicians even thinking about supporting this, you need to think of the long game, not the short game, because I think Fred Upton supported this tax bill too, by the way.
Fred Upton definitely supported it because, of course, he's going to support it because it benefits his freaking donors. It benefits the people who keep him in office.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I've been trying to get at Fred Upton on a myriad of issues ranging from, because as far as I'm concerned, attacks on net neutrality are attacks on the First Amendment. And I don't play around with that.
I'm saying anybody running in 2018, attack him on that tax bill, man.
Yeah, attack him on the tax bill. Attack him on... Fred Upton is against net neutrality.
Oh, yeah,
Fred Upton is against net neutrality. Hit him on this tax bill, hit him on net neutrality, hit him on support for the god-awful health bills that the Republicans tried to pass. Hit him legislatively every single time, body blow by body blow by body blow, because he's given them to you.
Yeah, and that was the problem with Paul's campaign last time, is basically what they tried to do was just tie him to Trump. And say, find all those areas where he agreed with Trump and tie him in. And, there were people who were really mad about trade. And, I brought up, Fred's support for the TPP. People were ready to get on board. So, political strategy. This tax bill is going to be gold for the opposition, because
it should be gold for the opposition.
And net neutrality, because as a lot of articles have been coming out lately saying, a lot of people on the right are very upset about this too, including Breitbart.
Actually. watching R the Donald implode over net neutrality is actually one of the more beautiful things to watch on Reddit.
Oh, it really is. Okay, well, it's about 7 o'clock, everybody. I want to thank y'all for listening. Once again, thanks to our friend Joe for coming on and dropping some mad truths
about the Bolsheviks.
About the Bolsheviks and the Russian Revolution. Again, real quick, if you're interested in going to that lecture, that's going to be Wednesday, December 6th at 7 p.m. at here at the Bernhard Center, room 209. All right, I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Again, you can find our shows on YouTube. And thank y'all again. Keep fighting for that revolution solution.